I keep thinking of the Elton John song Philadelphia Freedom that keeps playing in my head.
I don't know that song, I don't think.
Oh, check it out. I think it was
Yes, you do.
Oh, how does it go? Sing it for me, Matt.
Oh, I'm not going to sing it. Yeah, Matt's singing it there. It's not about Martina Navratilova. I can't remember. It was
not
about
ringing a bell at all.
about a lesbian tennis player.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Based on a True Story. My name is Matthew Baxter.
And hi, everyone. I'm Karen Stolzno.
And hello from my creepy basement. I'm Blake Smith.
It's not that creepy.
It's a little.
I'm gonna turn the lights out.
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
I vote for creepy. So this time we are looking at a glorious film from the mid '80s called The Philadelphia Experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And
based on a true story.
Based on a true story.
This is a companion to our Monster Talk podcast episodes, 2 episodes with Professor David J. Halperin, in which we discussed the true story behind this. It's a very complicated story. This
it is. It's very layered. So I mean, I don't want to start out with spoilers, but it's
not at the same time.
This show's all about spoilers, though, as we always say.
Well, this movie's based on a true story, in that it's based on a real legend, which in turn is based on the absolute maniacal ravings of a confabulator. So it's like if you dig down,
demonetized for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You say confabulator. That sounds a little dirty. He was confabulating on live TV. It's like,
yeah, trying to convince people he was facticating.
Allow me to circumcise for a moment.
Okay.
Let's get off topic. I don't know how to pick this back up again now.
Yeah, I just got hit with a wave of depression for some reason. Back on topic here. So Michael, is it Michael Perry? Is that how we're pronouncing this? Since it's got the little
Perry.
Yeah. I don't know why I never get that right, because I always just refer to him as Eddie Wilson. So this is
from difficult one of your favorite movies,
Eddie and the Cruisers. Yes.
That's why he seems so familiar. I kept thinking he kept reminding me of Mallory's boyfriend from that TV show, Family Ties. Yeah.
Oh, was he in that too?
Yeah, that was Scott Valentine.
Yeah, it was a different guy, but he just had the same sort of big hair, 80s
Italian
heartthrob kind of
thing.
Yeah. Hey, was a little Sylvester Stallone in the way he delivers his lines.
Fonzie,
Little Fonzie.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is this movie is actually connected to Eddie and the Cruisers. As you know, he goes forward in time to the 80s.
Where he meets a cruiser in jail. Good point. Okay, no.
and then goes back and then comes forward again. But what we don't see is that he goes back halfway to the 50s
or 60s.
Yeah. And because he knows what's going to happen in the 80s, that it'll be a huge movie then. So
he's a time traveler.
Yes. And the thing is like with Eddie Lives, all it took was a mustache and no one recognized him. So
what are we actually, what is the real plot? What is the plot of this film? This is a very strange movie.
It lost the plot, I think. But
okay. So was it the USS Eldridge? Was the sort of the site, floating site of a military experiment. Now, what they're wanting to do is make their ships invisible to radar. That's how what the movie is saying about it. They want to make this invisible to radar, these ships. So there's a very stressed out, I assume, what would you call physics guy?
Physicist of some sort. Yeah.
Physics guy or physicist, whichever.
His clothes are coded to 1940s scientists, I would say. So
yeah. Well, he didn't have the lab coat, but
he did not.
No. That's why you weren't sure at first exactly what his role was, except for the fact that he kept doing this with his watch, and which meant something about time is going on here.
Exactly. Very subtle.
That was not a red herring. Foreshadowing is what that was. Now, the thing is this didn't work. This whole making the ship invisible to radar, because it just made the ship vanish.
Yeah.
Now, in the movie that's based on the legend, they didn't really talk about what the legend mostly talks about, and that's what happens to the ship.
Right. In fact, they changed it significantly because it's in the original legend. When they turn on the invisibility thing, instead of it turning it invisible, it teleports the entire ship hundreds of miles down, I think South Carolina or North Carolina, off the coast down there.
Yeah.
And then crew members are horrifically found embedded in the ship's surface. They're some of them are running around alive and on fire for like 18 hours, and they can't put the fire out. It's a horror story, the original
it is.
case, so I'm actually kind of glad they don't do it that way,
because
towards the end they
do
people fused
and didn't that feel weird and like tacked on compared to like how everything else was going, or it feels strange to me
in terms of effects. I mean, it didn't stand up to the rest of the movie in terms of how those effects were. But because Stellar is Karen kept bringing
80s.
Kept bringing up the term Manitou.
It reminded me of that movie.
Wow, I can't believe you've seen the Manitou. That's amazing.
Well, married to him, he kind of forced me to see it, and I regret it very much.
But you had a great reference for this movie, so
it is probably the greatest horror movie starring a little person, Native American shaman who pops out of a person's back I've ever seen. So
out of all of them,
out of all of them, it is the best. So
can shoot lasers out of his body. So
definitely some of the effects were kind of reminiscent of that.
Yes,
and, it was a little embarrassing at times. Really, I think the effects were very dated.
The thing is, Karen, you didn't know anybody that made the movie, so there was no one you really had to feel embarrassed for, other than yourself for watching it.
Well, maybe that's where it was coming from.
Yeah,
it's the sea Manitou. So might be like a manatee, I guess. Anyway, that's not important. The important thing is, you're right, the special effects of this film are not great,
but they were charming.
It's filmed in the 80s. I'm assuming they filmed it late 83, and then it was released in 84. But
I want to ask about that, because they do mention 1984. Is that some kind of Orwellian reference or not? Because you have the weather is almost like it's Armageddon, and I'm just wondering if there's some kind of connection there, or they're trying to link it.
I think the original Philadelphia, wasn't it 43 when the original Philly experiment happened, or allegedly happened? I think it was 43.
So during World War II.
Yeah, my guess is they were trying to get it out in 83, so it would be 40 to 80 years, like 40-year anniversary kind of thing, but that didn't really happen.
Right. Maybe,
and that's just a guess. Keep in mind the story behind this was, it wasn't even called the Philadelphia experiment. It was called the Allende mystery up until the very end of like 79 or 8, whenever the book that had Berlitz on the title, that although he wasn't the primary author, that was when it became sort of the Philadelphia experiment instead of the Allende mystery. But at that point, so we're really only talking like 4 or 5 years before this movie rolls out, that story's coming out. Also, 1980 was the first time it was sort of clear that Carlos, even though some people knew, Carlos Allende's hoaxing was absolutely, because what happened was they were able to after the book came out, they were able to track down the rest of his family, who turns out were not speaking Spanish, and they were all from Pennsylvania, and that Carlos Allende is really Carl Allen and had just taken on this character and made all this stuff up, and was very interesting guy. So
I think that people, if they haven't listened to our episodes, they should pause at this point and go and listen to those as some background to this.
Some really good background. It's it's a lot more, I guess, very insightful, serious, and tragic than the original, than this relatively fun movie. I mean, this is a sci-fi film. It's a time travel movie. But it came out, it had the misfortune of coming out in a year when a lot of other good stuff came out, and it didn't really stack up very well with, say, Terminator.
That's kind of a classic now, though. I have most people, lots of people, certainly our viewers will have seen it.
Yes, yeah.
It's held up.
It feels like a solid B movie, I certainly a good VHS rental if you're a Blockbuster and like looking for something to watch. So if you find yourself back in the 80s, as often happens to us, roll over there to the new releases and grab this one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw shades of that too. I mean, it was really, this reminded me of a lot of other movies. And it seems like they, I don't think they were intending to be true to the urban legend in any way.
No. Right.
Looking up comments from scriptwriters, they had a bunch of different scriptwriters. One of the first ones was John Carpenter, and he wrote an original draft, and he said it was a great shaggy dog story, absolute crap, but what a great story.
Yeah.
And then they had Stuart Raffel, I guess, who became involved with the film. And he said that it had been rewritten 9 times by the time that he got around to writing the script.
Wow, that's as many times as Ferris Bueller ditched school.
Yeah. Well, no, until he fixed the computer.
That's true.
On that, so 2 times.
Poor Rooney.
So Stuart Raffel agreed to do the film, subject to the next rewrite, which he thought was terrible. And the head of the studio agreed with his additions to the script, even though it was only 3 weeks before filming. So they really did this on the cheap. And this guy had never actually dictated a screenplay before. So he had someone that was sent to the house, a girl who dictated the story to him, and he just filled in the dialogue. So that's how they put this together. This was really kind of haphazard.
So the actors didn't have a whole lot of time with the script. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the acting was very stilted.
It was hastily written, and they didn't have very long to work with the script as well. And I thought, sometimes the acting was good, other times it was a little poor.
Yeah, a little poor. Yeah, but still fun. Still fun.
I'm being kind.
Yeah.
so they're supposed to be turning the ship invisible. And then instead, the whole ship just disappears. And we get sort of 2 perspectives. There's the people back here in 43 trying to figure out where the ship went. And then we see on the ship, the crew are freaking out, running around using that. What do they call that? Posterized video effect, I think they call it. And it's just like for
convincing.
It's really unclear why, but our 2 main characters, sailors, jump off of the ship, and instead of landing in the water, which I think was their plan, was just to get off the boat, they fall through time, like the beginning of that show Voyagers from the 80s.
I haven't seen that, but
they fall through a time tunnel, and you see like swirls, and then they end up in
a beach or
it's
like we've gone plaid. At one point.
I just watched that with my kids for the first time. So they end up basically, it looks like maybe it's Death Valley in I'm not sure, some desert valley with a
Utah or something.
And they're wandering around and confused. They start to see signs. They find a road. They see signs that something's not right. They don't they don't comment. They don't say, "Are we in the future?" They don't do any of that. They just keep going. That's strange. That's strange.
What the hell is that car?
They go to a cave to get some food.
That's exactly what we said.
Yeah, because there was no accent of you.
There's nothing. It's just they stop at the cave to get some food. When they get inside, that's like the first real clear indicator things have changed, because they see a couple of 80s punk rockers get out of a car and go in.
And the cost of their ham and eggs.
Yeah, the breakfast special is probably going to take all the money they have.
Oh, and the television as well. There's nudity on the the
TV,
and they're like,
there was that was really surprising that the TV had nudity, but that's the movie's, I think it's called Slithis.
Okay.
And it's a real movie. I just I thought it was Humanoids from the Deep, but apparently it is not. It's Spawn of the Slithers.
It was Benny Hill.
Yeah. Well, it does, I mean, you see like a lady with a beauty contest, and then you see I guess I can totally see that, and then and she's running around with her boobs hanging out. That's the technical term.
That was my point of reference from growing up with 80s
So,
TV.
so I'm going to hunt that down because I love to watch old 80s and 70s horror movies, but I don't think I've seen Slithers. But it really did remind me of Humanoids of the Deep, which has sort of the same kind of thing going on, which weird monster chasing ladies around.
Most 80s movies didn't do that.
No. This was very risque.
Yeah. Well, no,
but
it was like it could have been any 80s.
It could have been, and I don't know why they picked that movie. I couldn't find any clear connection between that movie and the director and producers are here or whatever. So, but maybe it was just really inexpensive. It might have just been on TV, but that seems unlikely. So, but in the background though, as they're walking in there, I don't know if Matt, if you got a picture of this incredible little archaeology. I mean, I'm a big fan.
We can have a picture. We can do that later on. Or...
Yeah.
So this just needs also a good point, Kieran. We could fix this in post. Look at this. Here they are inside the cave, and in the background, I don't know if you can see this or not, but and we partially obscured maybe. You got Battlezone from 1980, and then to the right, that is Lunar Lander from 1979, which was, I believe, Atari's first vector graphics arcade game.
To look at them now, that kind of looks like they're just fresh out of prison.
Yeah, they did. Well, that's actually my wife Kathleen came over to watch part of this with me, and she said, "Are those guys in jail?" I said, "No, it's the Navy. It's very similar, but you actually get paid."
Thing,
you don't get to decide where you go. There's a lot in common. There's a lot in common. So, I mean, I had a wonderful time in the Navy, but there's times when you definitely feel like you're not so much working as working out a sentence,
I'm sure.
I was in the Army. I hear you.
Very there you go. So
but remember that scene. That was a fun scene, and certainly as it's kind of dawning upon them that something's up, and the weather outside again,
it is
storm
frightful.
Whipping up, and it is. It made me think of Mad Max a little bit too, just some kind of apocalypse, and just like there was some kind of, it was ominous, something was about to happen.
They keep playing around with the idea that the protagonists are going to they're not, like the time travel thing. They find a beer bottle in the desert before they get to this cave, and it's Lowenbrow or
Yes.
So I don't know. It just made me laugh. So
it took me a moment. It's like it's Lowenbrow. They're those German,
German,
and it was like, because okay, I got it now.
Right,
and how the Coke can was so light and everything, and
Well, it was interesting later on when he's with that woman and he's kind of reading up on history and what's happened, and what, we're friends now with Japan and with Italy, and what was
Russia's the bad guy,
and
It is hard to explain.
So I do have one question really quickly. At the time, did they call it World War II?
Yeah, I think they were actually calling it World War II or the Second World War during the war.
Okay. And I'm just not sure. I mean, I think we will have to look this up.
Put it in the comments if you guys know off the top of your head.
I know that it was World War One was not called World War
One, right?
It was. It was the Great. It was the Great War.
Exactly.
And then, but very likely because they'd already named that World War One at that point, that they could have been talking about it as World War Two. But not entirely sure. We should check this post and cut it out if we're wrong.
Well, no, just have people in the comments set us straight. That's all we need. But there was like a couple of things like that here and there that I was like, I wondered. And other ones that were like, "Ooh, that's a good point." Like the Russia thing. We're friends. Or Russia's the enemy now. Those are all kind of good points to have mixed in. Kind of fun. So
made it fun. Yeah.
It was funny. Kathleen's big thing was we were watching that scene, and she comes in from with the weird weather outside with a bag of groceries, and the door to the motel opens out, and for some reason Kathleen's like, "Why would the door open out?" And I'm like, "Wow, that is a detail I would have. We could watch this show 10 more times. I would have never picked up on that."
That's interesting because I didn't. I didn't articulate it at the time when I saw that, but I thought it was strange as well because I guess it was to allow the weather to really come in like that. And not blow the door on her or something like that. But that was strange, or maybe that was an 80s thing that I'd missed.
I don't know. I've been in a lot of cheap motels. I've never seen one like that. So, That's a true thing. Oh, so anyway, so they realize they're in the past, and then I really
you were in the past watching it. They were in the future.
They were in the right. They realized that they had been in the past. Now they're in the future. Jim, his friend Jim, is having physical sickness, and they can't figure out why. And that's when they blow up.
Like his hand is glowing. And,
well, okay.
Lightning
If anything electrical is around, Jim's going to grab it or run into it. I don't know if you noticed that, but he gets electrocuted by the ship. He gets electrocuted by the fence, and then the whole world's trying to just attack him with electricity. Bless his heart.
Mm-hmm.
So
ouch.
He needed that 8.1 gigawatts of
yes, 1.21 gigawatts
to get back to.
But I think his hand looked scorched at one point.
It does, and
it seemed like he was dying, like it was overtaking him, and then going to overtake the world.
Oh, and it's a real mysterious thing. It's like our main character David doesn't want to give in to whatever that illness is, but Jim ultimately does. I guess we should point out that basically, in order to get out of this, they get into a weird situation where his sickness causes those two video games, those important video games, to get blown up by lightning. And the store, the cave owner pulls out a pistol from nowhere and is going to shoot them, or he wants to
very 80s accurate.
Yes,
pay his $3 for their
he's like, whatever. I don't know what you boys are up to, but y'all gonna pay for them video games, It's like, so they have to kidnap Nancy Allen and take the gun away from the cafe chef. I'm gonna stop doing that. But that they go on the run, and that's when they find out while they're driving down the road that the date is that famous scene, kind of like from the Terminator. What's the date? What day is it? No, what year? You guys don't know what year it is, So, and I did like that he tried to check in with the base. That's a very sailor thing to do. He's lost. He wants to at least let them know so he's not AWOL. That this is not my fault. I got teleported into the future.
What's confusing to me is that he had enough money for the phone call.
Yeah. I mean, that would have still been a dime, I think, right? I know they rolled him up to quarters in the mid 80s. I don't know what year that was. Okay. So,
but he had enough for the call and knew exactly how to call and didn't have any issues.
Oh, you know what? Phone. He asked for money, but then he called collect to reverse the charges.
He did. That's right. That's right. He did. So. Yeah, but I think he was putting lots of coins in. So I don't know.
But also, I don't think he commented on the fact that it was touch tone. I think I don't remember if it was a rotary dial phone or not. But that's another thing.
I think there was some inconsistencies in the movie, and for the life of me now, I can't think of them off the top of my head. But there were little things here and there where Matt and I were going, well, this wouldn't have been this way, surely, and just things that seemed a little off. But I don't think they really detracted heavily from the movie.
No, not too bad. I mean, okay, it's rotary dial. I just verifying. Okay, we're good. Do you need a picture of that for the show, Matt? I got it.
I think I'm okay.
They have a So so anyway, they get arrested and taken to the hospital. I think it gets a little confusing. They get arrested, but they decide not to press charges. But then they decide they need to take Jim to the hospital because he's dying. She won't press
charges, but I thought that was strange. I'm sure that they would have pressed charges anyway because of everything that happened with the car chase and.
Well, I
think it would have been up to her.
And the brandishing of firearm and
right. Well,
stuff like that.
The cafe guys didn't want to press charges because they didn't want to have to come into town to deal with it, and that they're far enough away. That kind of made sense,
Some truth.
I know he's going to want his gun back though, because I mean somebody else might mess with a video game. You got to keep them guns around. So, so you don't want anybody. You don't want people messing up your video games. I know I don't. I mean that Battlezone game now is worth $5,500. That's a lot. So.
Wow. Impressive. So, but I did think it was interesting how they were getting chased by the military later on. And it seemed to me that they would have been very precious. They would have been needing them for information, and yet they were kind of
fugitives.
It seemed like it took a long time for David to get connected with the scientists and realize that they were really working on the same project of getting him. Like that took way longer than it ought to have. So
Oh, true. Yeah.
yeah.
Even though he kind of identified it early on, it seems. So it took them a while to find them.
Yeah. And he's from California, it turns out, so that's convenient. Even though he'd been stationed on the East Coast, he was from the West
Coast. It didn't
Coast.
Sound like it at
Yeah,
all.
no, not really, no. But he gets Allison is Nancy Allen's character, and the two of them, after they lose Jimmy to the time disease, whatever that was, they don't really explain it, but he
disappears just
back.
like the ship.
Yeah. So I mean, you ultimately find out he's okay, but they go look for David's dad, and it's kind of melancholy because it's been a long time, but he's like, he finds the sweetness in it. Like, even though his dad's no longer alive, he did fulfill one of his dreams. I thought that was nice,
Yeah.
But then they go, I forget why they exactly do it, but they go looking for Jim, because if he survives and the ship comes back, he's there somewhere. So they go looking for him. And then that's a very awkward sequence to me. I thought that was, they don't really explain why Jim is so reticent to even talk to him, because it seems like they could have resolved things pretty fast. Like, dude, that was an experiment. It's all okay. Anything he could have cleared. Instead, he just acts like he doesn't know who he is and creates another awkward scene. So
yeah, I think they were trying to imply that he had post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that, and was very scarred by what had happened and just didn't want to talk about it. But I found that section a little confusing too, and it seemed like he'd done quite well for himself. It was like they had a vineyard or something.
Yeah, didn't it seem like he had a really it's like
I was a little confused about who they were seeing and why and how they so easily found the place. It was that was a little confusing. A lot of things seem to be happening without them being explained very well.
They just looked it up on the internet and boom.
Which was just a few years away.
Oh, so. Did you love that that sort of war room or whatever with all the computers in, with all the guys operating the computers and everything? There was not a single computer screen anywhere.
Yeah.
And they did have those in 84. But it was just the boards with blinking lights. And
one of the few computers you see is a VIC-20. I don't know why.
I brought that up too. I was like, that looks like a Commodore.
Yeah. And not even the current one. I mean, the 64 was the boss machine at the time. And so the VIC-20s, they really dumped all their $200 into that. So unbelievable.
Yeah. But it still seemed very, very high tech to them though.
Well, it's like the IT
coming
crowd
from 43.
When they what was the guy's name in the closet?
The goth guy. Oh goodness gracious. I
know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name.
It should come to. I don't want to look it up. Yeah.
Why is he out of his room?
Oh, he's got such. Noel Fielding's the actor. I got that.
Yep.
God.
But you remember, all it was this thing with blinking lights.
Yeah, look at that. Did you see that? Yeah, that's a great scene.
Why does it do that?
I don't know.
I don't know. But then we can also go back to, what was it, Airplane 2 or 3 with William Shatner.
Richmond. I would not have gotten that. Yeah.
Richmond. That's right. Yeah. Love Richmond. But we go back to one of the Airplane sequels with William Shatner on the moon.
Yeah, where they're flying the space shuttle to the moon. It's very peculiar.
Yeah. And it was just, the lights are blinking, and he starts losing his mind there a little bit. That's what this room was. It was just a bunch of blinking. It reminded me a little bit of the Whopper also in War Games.
Well, I mean, the control room in the ship in the 1943 is basically a big generator and a bunch of vacuum tubes. No explanation, and they just all turn on and turn off together. So it's not a logic board, whatever it is. It's more like a marquee sign or something. Show.
And what about David when they do send him through the portal and he gets dressed up in that kind of, it looks like a space
suit.
And we immediately thought Dr. Atlantis with the big
hey, there you go.
Hat.
Yeah, exactly. So that was very peculiar too. So I guess basically David makes it to the military base where they're doing the experiment, and it turns out that the experiment has gone poorly, and it's still happening. Like, it's still connected as far as the present here in California. In 1943 in Philadelphia, there's a time tunnel between the two locations, and they can't shut it down, and everybody's freaking out. So, and they got character actor Stephen Tobolowsky, the guy who played the insurance Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day. So Ned Ryerson. So it's like it's a doozy. Anyway, sorry. I love it. He's in a lot of stuff.
Yes, he is.
So David eventually is sent through the time tunnel to try to go back home. He gets onto the ship, sees his friend Jim, tells Jim they'll see each other again, takes an axe, chops up the equipment.
And that must have been fun, that scene, though.
Oh, yeah, I imagine so.
Destroying everything.
Because it had to be a one take.
I think those are not real vacuum tubes, because like already they were kind of out of production back then. Like right now,
like light bulbs to me.
They did look like light bulbs. I think they were just light bulbs. The real vacuum tubes used to be like pennies, and now it's like each tube's like $45 because they don't make them anymore. So I've got like an old radio I'm trying to restore, and I bet it would be really cool if I could swing buying all the parts, but I'm not doing that right now. So anyway, so he chops up all the computer equipment, and then that still gives him enough time to jump back over the ship and go back in time to hook up with Allison back in our past, but the future for them.
And yet he's still a young guy and wasn't the age that he would have otherwise been. So
right. So he's
wondered
out of time.
if he was going to turn up in his 40s or whatever, or 80s actually.
Well, I mean, the 60s. Funny part, he's going to have 60s, more in common with people at the nursing home than he is with his girlfriend there.
Yeah,
I mean, there's parts he'll probably have in common, but I mean, culturally, it's gonna. I mean, there is a Philadelphia Experiment 2 movie. I have not attempted to watch that. I don't.
And there's a 3 as well, and Michael Paré is in every one of them.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
We're playing different roles, presumably.
I have not seen them, but he seems to be very emotionally attached to this project.
Wow.
Or financially, I don't know, but it's an interesting thing, I think, and what this movie has done for the legend, I think, is also interesting, because if you go back and look, I remember finding stuff about the two guys that traveled through time and then came back and everything. I couldn't find anything about that actually connected with the actual legend. So it must have gotten pasted on after the movie.
After the movie, right. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of interesting that
the movies definitely polluted the folklore, right? Or
even more.
But it's funny because all of these websites that you go to kind of learn about the folklore, they're all basically titled "The Truth About the Philadelphia Experiment." And you read them and they say, oh, there's a boatload of people that still believe this. I couldn't find anywhere online where people actually still believe this. I couldn't find it.
You mean like people still believe in the Philadelphia Experiment as a time travel thing, or at all?
At all.
Oh yeah, it's still out there. They just had a guy on Coast to Coast who was an expert about it, which made me I chortled aloud in my kitchen because he was just so wrong. And I'll tell you something else. We're not going to get into it right now. But there is another piece of legacy from the Philadelphia Experiment that ties directly into Stranger Things, the TV show. And we're going to cover that in the future. So that'll be something we'll get to. So
again, there's just so many elements to this, but I would imagine that this would still be popular with conspiracy theorists.
Well, one thing that's interesting to me that I noticed this time watching through that I hadn't in the previous viewing was multiple references to Project Rainbow. And Project Rainbow was not originally part of the Philadelphia Experiment lore, as far as I could tell, but it was a real military project in the 50s to reduce the radar profile of aircraft. And not only do they mention it back in 43 in the movie, but they also, when David comes back to the future, he's watching the TV in the motel room and a commercial comes on for Digital Equipment Corporation's Rainbow Computer, which is another reference to the Rainbow Project. And I was like, that's funny. I mean, they were trying. I mean, they weren't, it's not a true story, but they were trying to tie it into real lore elements,
Right.
So. Yeah, it's interesting. And you remind me too of the fact that he was watching TV and Ronald Reagan comes on and he thought it was a movie. And, oh no, that's our president.
I enjoyed that too. Yeah, that was nice.
if you think about it, we had Reagan really weirded people out, you know, if they remember him from being a movie star. And then we had Trump, who was a TV star, right? Which means which means our next crazy presidential thing is going to be an influencer on Instagram is going to become president. And we're all going to be like, that's the future. That's the future.
Mr. Beast will be the president.
That is a terrifying idea.
One of the other things that I wanted to bring up was with the movie influencing the folklore is we watched a couple of videos back when David Halpern was going to be interviewed by you two. And one of the interviews said that they actually were trying to do experiments to make the ship invisible to radar. And that is actually not true at all. What they were trying to do. They were trying to degauss the ship so it would be invisible to both magnetic mines and magnetic targeting torpedoes.
I was on an aircraft carrier in the Navy, and they still use that degaussing technology. Now, when I was in the Navy, we still used CRT monitors. So the monitors themselves were color displays that had big magnets inside. And I don't think there was any real health risks for sailors, you know, unless you had some kind of, most sailors are young, active, fit people. They don't have pacemakers or whatever. But when they take an aircraft carrier and turn on that field to degauss it, the screen on that monitor just would like it was going down a drain. It would swirl around. The colors would change. It was unbelievable how much magnetic energy.
That's where they got the effects.
Yeah.
Like an MRI or something.
Yeah, it's crazy, you know. And then suddenly your aircraft carrier looks like, you know, a small Coast Guard cutter or something on the profile there. So
right.
Well, I've got a question. So with the maybe it's a silly question, but with the injuries that some of the sailors suffered being fused to the ship or dying, what would actually cause those effects then with what they were trying to do?
Well, when the ship teleported, the idea was it became insubstantial, and then when it became substantial again, they just sort of melted in and it fused. You know, kind of like in the X-Men. Kitty Pryde can pass through solid objects, but sometimes she pulls people through with her and then lets go, and then they get stuck in right. They're basically halfway merged, right? And in the Harry Potter universe, there's a word for that when you're trying to port and only part of you goes. I think splunching or something. I forget. It's not important.
Yep.
My concern about accuracy in the Harry Potter world is really
treated in other areas of fiction. Interesting.
Yeah, in Star Trek, especially the motion picture.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So
transporters, they call them. So that we've told the movie, and we've admitted that we've alluded to the fact that it's made up. But do we want to talk a little bit? I mean, obviously we've covered it in much more depth in our podcast. But do we want to talk briefly about what really happened behind the scenes?
Nothing.
Sure, absolutely. In a nutshell,
technically, yes. So I'm going to try to do this real fast. Okay, there's a lot more to this story, but there's a guy in the 1955 named Morris K. Jessup, who writes a book about the truth behind UFOs, which is interesting in itself, just because he's talking about UFOs, not flying saucers. So he was one of the first people to sort of bring that term to public awareness.
Right.
And holy cow, I just finished reading his book, and it's not at all what I expected. I've read a lot of flying saucer books from that time period, and they're usually about people seeing flying saucers and what it all means. His book's all about Forteana, Charles Fort, things falling out of the sky, ancient aliens. He basically implies that whatever is flying these craft is not from another planet. It's from near space, and it's probably the remnants of Atlantis or some similar society that had a global catastrophe, fled to space, and it is now that we're more, modern, is starting to like try to get involved again. That's what he thinks is going on. Anyway, interesting idea. Was not a huge blockbuster, but somebody took a copy of his book, wrote notes in it, and sent it to the U.S. Navy. And then the U.S. Navy took that and they thought it was really interesting, apparently, and a couple of sailors, not the official Navy, but a couple of sailors or people in this office had a copy of this book reprinted with all the annotations. And it turns out all those annotations were coming from a guy named Carl Allen, aka Carl Allende, and he alluded to the idea that that the real secret was, if you knew Einstein's second unified field theory, it could explain how that they could use technology and colors and radiation and prisms and other things to make a ship invisible. But when they tried to do it on the ship that he was attached to, the Eldridge, it teleported instead. And it turns out Allende is, and I'm trying to be kind, let's just say he was mentally ill. He was not well. He was functional.
He was an interesting character.
Yeah, he was an interesting character. He spent his whole life in playing different people, making up fabulous tales. He was a confabulator. I mean, it's a different. It's not just a compulsive liar. He loved to make up stories where he was involved. He was the hero of the story. He learned all of his physics directly from Albert Einstein. You know what I mean? It's like if a thing happened, he could one up it. He was always one better. Yeah. You know. So
John Lovitz.
Yes, like that, exactly. So now that we know Allende was a hoaxer and that he's really just Carl Allen, it kind of that undermines this movie's not true. The legends, I think, still widely believed in some circles, shouldn't be. I just was reading a PDF from Jacques Vallée explaining how this was all a hoax. And if Jacques Vallée tells you it's a hoax, I mean, that's a pretty good indicator.
The boy on the street.
So anyway, so not a true story.
Yeah. It just felt like, to me, I found more stuff on people believing the flat earth theory than this.
Yeah. I would say if there's a Billboard ranks, conspiracy theories, this ain't that high. So but maybe not well.
Some people still do believe it, from what
some people saying, still do believe it.
If you still believe it, mention it in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Smash that subscribe button. We'll come and
I'm sure
us, ruin more of your dreams. So
yeah.
But there is again, this it's not how true this legend is, it's how big the footprint is. Because this thing sprawls.
Definitely,
it sprawls.
The story is the most important thing here.
Yeah, and so we'll like I said, we will dig into that further on our companion podcast.
Yeah, this is really giving us a lot of material and fodder.
It really
for
is.
Episodes.
Yeah. The next movie we're going to watch, Karen, is Krull.
The Manitou.
That should Krull is great, but if you pulled a good one there, Matt. I like that a lot, because that is a strange ass movie. Oh my god, that is a strange movie. So it's fun, but man, it's trying to explain that.
In the same vein, then, I'm assuming.
No,
there
is no vein.
It's a fantasy sci-fi mashup. It is crazy. You think you're in a fantasy movie, and here comes the spaceship. You're like, what's that all about? Here comes the Cyclops. What's going on? It's like,
okay.
Oh, it is a ride. It is a ride.
It's going to confuse me further.
It's a cool weapon, though.
Well, we can sign off here. Do you want to talk about the movie, what we thought about it at all? Or?
Yeah, we could do that. Wind up, and then So
cool. Well, what do we think? Was the movie a good $5 for you and your whole family?
Well, this was my first time watching the film. I had not seen it before, and I thought it was good fun. And again, it kind of harkened back to Back to the Future for me, and it just had shades of other movies, and it was fun to watch, and certainly added a lot of extra elements to the original urban legend. So it was worth watching for me, but confusing at times.
Yeah, I wish we would have gotten a little more of the original legend mixed in.
That would have
been
the
fun. New story. Yeah. That would have been kind of cool to have that. And I think one of the things when we're talking about how it is a fun movie, it's unintentionally fun. They wanted to make it a lot more serious than they.
Yeah.
Well, especially because it's dated too.
Yeah,
they had budget challenges. The actors needed to look 1980s cool, and you don't really get that if you have 1940s Navy haircuts. So like there was a lot of their uniforms were a little slack, their haircuts were a little slack, but Navy accuracy aside, technological accuracy aside, And I thought Nancy Allen, who I like her work, and she was solid here, but it's a little bit of a stretch that she goes from being a hostage to an advocate so quickly. I think, that.
Well, she won an award. Did she win an award for this?
She was nominated by the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films for a Saturn Award for Best Actress.
And Saturns are good. That's a solid award. So I'm glad she was nominated. That's grand.
And apparently the scriptwriter won Best Film Award as well at the Fanta Festival in 1985.
Have you seen Linda Hamilton in The Terminator? Same year. Solid, I think.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. There's a difference right there. There
was a lot of really good movies that came out. Star Trek 3, I think, came out this year. I mean, there's a lot of good movies that came out this year. And there's, remember, the Never-Ending Story, I think, was this year too.
I was going to make reference to that. That it sometimes it felt like the nothing was coming in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah,
but I think it still stood its ground, and I think people still are talking about the movie to this day. And it's one of those kind of iconic movies, classic. And
no children lost their horses to the swamp. I thought that was a nice choice.
That is good too.
So.
Yeah,
I mean, I enjoyed the film. I think it veers away from the original legend by doing time travel instead of teleport, and then I thought maybe went a little too gruesome at the very end. They go gruesome by showing you the people horrifically stuck in the ship. It's like, if you're going to change so many things, why leave in the horror? I don't know. That was
I was waiting for it, though. I have to admit, I was totally waiting for that to happen. And so I was like, how are they going to do it? How are they going to do it? It's going to look like Han Solo, in the
right at the end, it was a little too much, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they veered away from that R rating, like Nancy Allen and Michael Perry. They don't really, you don't get any steamy sex scenes, really.
They thought about it, though.
Yeah. Well, you could tell they were thinking about it.
In the horse trailer. Yeah. There's nothing sexier than a horse trailer.
Yeah. So
covered with
he doesn't want to make her into a, can you imagine what his values would be? I mean, from the 19th, anyway, it's not important, but that's So he missed all the 60s. Port. He missed the whole 60s. So he doesn't know how liberated
everything's. Give him something.
Yeah. I don't give their relationship high chances, honestly.
Somehow my dad missed the 60s as well.
Oh, it does happen. So well, mine did. What am I talking about? Mine did too, so
like mine too. Yeah.
Something to be avoided. Yeah. So
all right. Well, that was fun.
Anyway, it was good. So if you want to hear more about the complicated but very interesting human story behind how this movie and the legend came to be, please do check out our 2 episodes. Part 2 should already be dropped by the time this video drops, and you can find that.
We're going to bring this out soon.
monstertalk.org. You can follow us there for the podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes. You can go to monstertalk.org. Stop. Don't do that. You can go to patreon.com/Monster Talk and support us financially so that we can afford to continue making these fancy backgrounds like Matthew has over there. So
it's just complete AI. I asked AI about the Philadelphia experiment, and that's what they gave.
Oh, cool.
Was that Carlos AI in day?
Yes.
Very nice. On that note.
We'll
see you next time.
Yes, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Smash that subscribe. Okay.
Leave a comment.